education coverage is brought to you by Lilly, a medicine company.
Wish TV is your education station. The state says more than 3,000 students in Indiana are repeating the third grade this year because they did not pass the state's reading test. MJ Slaby is the bureau chief for our news gathering partners at Chalkbeat Indiana and is joining us with a deeper dive into the numbers from the State Department of Education. MJ, I was telling you, parents see this, they hear the number 3,000. That seems like a lot. How does that number compare to the total number of students who took the IREAD test statewide?
Yeah, good morning. So like you said, roughly 3,000 students are repeating the third grade, but that's out of over 84,000 students that were tested across the state this year. And from that 84,000 number, 10,600-ish didn't pass, but a good bulk of those, almost 7,000 of those students actually had a good cause exemption and were able to go to fourth grade anyway. And so really it comes down to 3,000 out of 84,000 kids statewide.
This is the first year that this is being implemented to actually hold kids back. The state had been doing some projections before. How does the number of actual students being held back compare to what the state had projected?
Yeah, so it's actually lower. Secretary of Education, Katie Jenner, pointed this out at the State Board of Education meeting last week, that the first estimates were around 7,000 kids across the state would be held back. So really less than half of those first estimates.
Not all of the students who failed the IREAD exam or didn't pass it fully were actually being held back. Can you explain this a little bit more? Who are those students and what are the factors there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the state has something called a good cause exemption. And like I said, it was nearly 7,000 students who got this good cause exemption. So they hadn't passed the IREAD 3, but they received one of a handful of exemptions. So either they're a student with disabilities, they're an English language learner with less than 2 years of English language services, they passed the iLearn math portion, or they were previously held back before. And so schools are able to kind of work within those parameters to say, it's actually in a student's best interest. They didn't pass the IREAD 3, but it's in their best interest to go to fourth grade. And according to the state data, about 75% of those kids who got that good cause exemption this year were students who have disabilities. About 24% were those English language learners I mentioned. And then the last 1% or so is in those last two buckets of either they passed math or they've been previously held back.
I have a first grader, so reading is something that we're approaching and working on now. But I'll be honest, this has me worried. What's going to happen if my student is held back in third grade? These students who have been held back, what happens to them next?
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing to point out, too, is that students have multiple chances to take the test, including twice in the summer after third grade. They're taking the test in second grade. And so the state is doing a lot to kind of monitor and make sure kids are on track to pass that test in third grade. But for those students that are held back, again, the state has a lot of literacy efforts, things that they're doing to keep an eye on those students and really drill down into ways to help them continue to learn to read and pass that test. And we're even seeing that as part of the state's new proposed accountability system for schools. So it's something that the state is saying, hey, even if they didn't pass it, we want you to make sure that they're going to pass it later on if they didn't do it in that first round of third grade.
And so I'm glad that you touched on that point of them making multiple efforts before this point to get these kids to the reading level where they want them to be.
Yeah, not one high stakes test for third graders.
Yes, thank you. MJ, we appreciate it as always.